Welcome back to CameraWest TV. My name is Carlo, and today we're introducing a brand new series to the channel called Thumbprints and Signatures. In this series, we'll be highlighting the unique visual signature of Leica lenses, new and old, and today we are featuring the 40 Summicron-C. The 40 Summicron-C was originally created for the Leica CL alongside the 90 f4 Elmar-C, and this was to create a compact set that consisted of one body and two lenses, and that was perfect for the ambitious snapshot travel photographer. In order to keep the Leica CL compact, it was agreed upon that the unusual focal length of 40mm would replace the need for a 35mm lens and a 50mm lens, and this with the 90 would span the range of Leica's classic lineup of 35 to 90mm. The 40 Summicron-C is actually the second version of this lens, which succeeded the 40 Elmarit-C, which I have right here, and this lens was actually a prototype which laid the groundwork for what was soon to be this lens. It's said that the 40 Summicron-C outperforms the 40 Elmarit-C, but let's see what unique visual signatures each of these lenses has. I think I'm gonna do like a little selfie in one of these mirrors. Oh. Yeah, I think like a composition with this thing would be really cool to use. So in terms of field of view, typically you can't see the frame lines for a 40mm focal length because it was only built in for the Leica CL. When you put the 40 Summicron onto any EM system, it'll engage the 50mm frame lines. So you kind of have to guesstimate either using the 50mm frame lines or the 35mm frame lines. So the way that you would frame using a rangefinder, you would use the 50mm frame lines to make sure everything is kind of within the frame. It requires a lot of pre-visualization. So we've been walking around with the 40 Summicron-C, and so far this lens has been really fun to use. It's very compact, as you can see. It's really small, and it's very simple to use with the distance scale. I've just been shooting everything Sunny 16 at ISO 200 and 64, so I've been kind of jumping around. I have to say that I really do like using this lens. I thought that it was going to be a little bit cumbersome considering how compact it was, but there's enough room for your fingers to switch between the aperture ring and the focus ring. In my other hand, I have the 40 Elmarit-C, and as you can tell, it's also very compact, and it might just be a tad bit shorter, maybe by like a few centimeters, maybe millimeters I should say, than the 40 Summicron. So we're going to do some tests at various apertures to show you how each lens performs. I'm going to do one at f2, actually f2.8. Both lenses at maximum aperture have a dreamy sort of look towards the edges, and then when you start getting more towards the center where things are in focus, you start to see a slight bump in contrast. Things in the foreground and things in the background, it almost has kind of like a swirl-ish effect. It's not very like prominent, but it's enough to notice that there is this kind of ethereal type of look around the edges of the photos. And there's slight vignetting, but I think that adds to the natural characteristic of the lens. The 40 Summicron is compact and extremely sharp, and if you wanted a more modern look, you can stop down the lens and it'll be similar to how modern Leica lenses perform. But if you wanted to open it up, it gives you more of that vintage look and signature. And that's also to say the same thing for the 40 Elmarit-C. Even though it was seen as the lesser performing lens, the visual signature that you get at f2.8 still has kind of that ethereal type of look, but you still have some pretty good contrast in the center, giving your subjects more focus. So I think having either of these lenses would be great options just because of its size and characteristics. The 40 originated with the Elmarit-C, and this served as a prototype for the 40 Summicron-C. And this lens was so beloved by many Leica enthusiasts that Leica decided to bring it back in the early 90s and late 90s through the Leica CM and as well as the Minilux, which was right before this camera. And this houses a 40 Summarit f2.5. And we'll cover this camera and lens in another episode of Thumbprints and Signatures. This is Carlo. See you next time.